Hi guys and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got the on-track series video for the British Tier 10 heavy tank, the Chieftain MK6. Now if you haven't seen an on-track series video before, it's basically we go through every tank from Tier 5 to 10 in any given line and get an ace tanker in every single one. We'll go through the commander skills that I run on each tank and the equipment setup that I run on each tank, and you just generally get to view what the tank is like at its best. So, the whole British line, heavy tanks, on the whole, is a great line. It struggles at certain points, but once you have to get past the hard bits to get to the good bits. It's usually the way in life, right? And it's just a fantastic line from about Tier 8 onwards, to be honest. Tier 7 is not too bad. Tier 6 is dreadful. This tank's not too bad. You just have to get past the slowness and the sort of situationally good parts of these tanks, pretty much. And yeah, the line as a whole is pretty damn great, because, I mean, this line in itself leads to 3 separate Tier 10 heavy tanks. The Super Conqueror, the Chieftain, and the FV215B. Now, the FV215B and the Super Conqueror will at some point have their own version of this, where we'll go through the whole thing again. You'll go through the whole line again, you'll see it all again, and we'll go through it again, just so that, you know, if people look up specific tanks, for example, even though this branches off into 3 separate tanks and it's going to be a bit repetitive, for those that want to know what each line... Basically, say that someone is not bothered about getting the Chieftain, they just want the Super Conqueror. They might not watch the Chieftain video at all, so they won't get to see these tanks. So, in the end, I'll end up doing one for all 3 anyway and go through these tanks again, for example. So yeah, so this is the first tank in the line, and it is the Churchill I. Now, what do I think of the Churchill I? The Churchill I is honestly not that bad, it's just slow, right? And the one thing that is a good piece of advice that I will tell you that will alleviate a lot of the problems that you will feel with this tank is do not use the top gun, because the top gun is what you get on the Churchill VII as well. And don't use it, because number one, you get 3 degrees of gun depression with it, and that is absolutely atrocious. You do not want to use that gun with that. And not just that, the rate of fire on it is like 5 seconds for 150 alpha at tier 5, which 150 alpha at tier 5 isn't too bad, but the 5-second reload, coupled with the fact that you have armour that is okay, right? And 3 degrees of gun depression with a bad aim time as well, at 2.3 seconds, it's not bad, but you know, it's slow. It's just not that great of a gun to use at tier 5. Use this gun. This gun that you are seeing right now is the buffed version of the gun that sits on the Cromwell Snakebite and the Excelsior tier 5 Premium. Now that gun normally has 91 pen and 144 APCR pen. Not on the Churchill I, they buffed it. It's got 120 standard pen and 165 or 160 premium pen. Now you might be going, well, that's different from like 145 standard pen and 202 premium pen. Well, really, at the tier, except for facing something like a Japanese super heavy, 120 pen on the standard and 160 pen, sorry, on the premium is enough. And look how quickly it fires. Now it has I believe it's either 115 or 135 damage, which is a lot lower than 150, but look how quickly they fire. 2.2 seconds. 2.2 second reload, you've got a 1.9 second aim time, and you also get 12 degrees of gun depression. And that it means this tank can be incredibly flexible, and you're seeing here just how much. Now obviously it is also 0.4 accuracy, so it's derpy, but 6.0 helps that. And it just makes the tank so much more bearable, and you saw how quickly we could rack up the damage so quickly in that game with that gun. That gun is the one you want to use. You may have to lay out the premium a lot more, but definitely use it. We finished that game with 4 kills, 2.6k damage, ace tanker, high caliber, and 1970 base XP with 2.6, yeah, like I say, 2.6k damage. That gun is the one to use. Use that gun, 120 pen, 160 pen on the Churchill I. It makes the tank really far more bearable, and as well as that, it actually makes it pretty damn good, because it's got that incredible rate of fire for a good amount of damage, and the fact that you're aiming in quicker as well. You may be more derpy, but the fact that you aim in a lot quicker means that you just get to fire more, and honestly that's more useful than having the slightly higher alpha with a worse rate of fire. And the 12 degrees of gun depression instead of 3 is beautiful. I think it's 8 over the front and then 12 over the side, something like that. But it just makes it makes the tank usable. Unlike this tank, which I absolutely despise, the Churchill VII is an abomination of a tank. You will have to struggle through this tank so much. You might be thinking, oh, I've got the British Bulldog, which I got for free. You know, I've never been through the British line. I play the British Bulldog. The British Bulldog's really good. Well, the British Bulldog has more gun depression than this tank, has a better rate of fire than this tank, a better aim time. I'm not sure about the engine power. It's definitely the same speed and same armour layout. And it's got pref. Right, so you're never going to see tier 8s. Which is great, because this tank just cannot stand up to tier 8s. Can't really stand up to tier 7s all that well. But, yeah, the British Bulldog is better than this tank in every way. This tank is dreadful, right? Because it's got not the greatest rate of fire in the world. It's not got the greatest aim time in the world. It's got, well, I mean, to be fair, 2.9 reload now, post 6.0, isn't too bad compared to, I think it used to be like 3.4, which, yeah, the 10% extra bet is nicer, but yeah, the reload is not as great as you think for the 150 alpha, especially when you're facing a lot of tanks at tier 7 that have like 240, 250, even 390 alpha. You know, and the amount of times you will be against tier 7s is quite often. Just the tank has no armour either. The armour on this tank is just dreadful. It's not actually much better than the tier 5. It's just got better turret armour. Like 152mm on the turret up front instead of 100mm. It's a dreadful tank. It's really slow. And that's the other thing. It's like 5 kilometers slower than the tier 5 as well. So it's atrocious. The 3 degrees of gun depression makes this tank unbearable unless you're on a map like Himmelsdorf, which means you don't really need the gun depression all that much, but it just does make the tank unbearable. It's a dreadful, dreadful tank. Now, the one thing that I didn't go through for the Churchill I, and to be honest, it's exactly the same as the Churchill VII in that regard, is the fact that I ran rammer, optics, and vents. Now, I ran the optics and the vents. Optics and vents go together for making the view range as good as possible, but not just that, the vents also makes the DPM as good as possible and makes just the whole round tank generally better. The vents, I mean the optics, sorry, you just want to make that view range as high as possible. It's a slow tank. It's just like the Black Prince prototype that we did the other day. If you get caught out driving across the open to get to another position of cover, you want to be able to spot things that might outspot you and catch you out, because if you can't outspot them and you're not spotting the things that are spotting you to shoot you, you will die, and that is not something you want. Now, in terms of the crew layout, it's actually the same crew I used all the way up the line, and that is Brothers in Arms, Rapid Loading, Track Mechanic, Sixth Sense, Situational Awareness, Steady Aim, Run and Gun, Snapshot, and Armour Angling, so that you're reducing the damage you're taking by 5% as much as possible. Because it's one of those tanks that doesn't trade very well, so every little bit of extra damage you can squeeze out, and every single hit that you take less of, the more damage you can try and push out, the more you can push the gun out. Like I say, this tank is dreadful. We're on Himmelsdorf, which is the perfect ideal, and we're just trying to get as much damage in as possible. We're going to try and attack this MXM445, who is going to pen us very easily, because he's got the top gun with like 200 odd pen. And we're just going to use the dead wreck in front of us to keep bobbing backwards and forwards in front of, because there's a likelihood that he could try and shoot us and he'll hit the tank that's in front of us. So we get a nice shot into him there, and just because we are covering most of our hull as well with this dead tank in front of us, we are managing to make sure that he can't pen us. He's just catching our outside track every time, which means he's not penning us. He gets shut down, and now we have 3 tanks left on the enemy team, which we know where they are. They're in our base, or they're heading towards our base off the hill. I get unspotted in case there is still someone camping up on that hill, therefore I won't get shot. We know where like I said, we know where the IS-2 is, and it's just another heavy tank and a medium tank. For the Churchill VII, obviously Himmelsdorf is the perfect scenario, and that's because it's flat. It's flat. As long as you don't go to the hill, you can get to wherever you need to as quickly as possible. And you can just get things done. You can side scrape off of corners to try and make your armour as good as possible. And all that good, lovely stuff. Now, there is one thing that is dreadful about the Tier 5, the Tier 6 and the Tier 7, and that is pretty much the shell velocity on these guns. The shell velocity on the last tank was pretty slow. I think it was like 600 or 700 metres a second on its AP. On this gun, which is the top gun for the Churchill I, but the gun that you use on the Churchill VII as well, the velocity is like 800 metres a second, and that is slow on the AP, and you do notice it over distance that the shells do loop, so you just take that into consideration when you're aiming at people. Now, we've driven around the corner at this Draugen. I know that he could kill me, right? I'm just intent on getting as much damage out of him as possible. Unfortunately enough, he's probably noticed that we are capping, so he's driven around the corner to try and get away from us so that he doesn't die, and we cap out. But we finished that game with a very, very good game for this tank. 2,500 damage, ace tanker, Confederate, 402 assistance, 1,671 base XP, and that is a really good game for this tank, especially when you are bottom tier like that. But we didn't really face too many tanks that were superiorly high tier to us, which managed to use the terrain to our advantage and keep ourselves covered. Now, we're on to the third game and the tier 7 in this British heavy tank line, and that is the Black Prince. Now, like I say, you may have seen the A43 Black Prince prototypes review the other day. This tank is obviously the tier 7, it's the same tank pretty much, but it's a tier higher with higher stats. And I actually don't mind the Black Prince. The only problem with the Black Prince is just how slow it is, which means there's a lot of times where games do pass it by very, very easily. And that can be a bit of a problem, and it's just something that... It's the same with all slow tanks. You've just got to put yourself in the situation where you can always be in a place to shoot people. But it doesn't always work like that, and there's a lot of maps where it can go badly for you, right? But we're on Highway, and Highway is okay for us, because obviously we got the perfect spawn on K3, which means we can just drift into the town and hopefully brawl in there. Now, the Black Prince obviously has something different to the Churchill VII, and that is gun depression. My goodness me, it's got gun depression, which is just delightful. It's got 7 or 8 degrees of gun depression, which means that you can actually use ridge lines. You're not hitting a slight bump, and that means that your gun just shoots up in the air and you can't do anything, which is delightful. The gun on this tank is also really good. They buffed it quite a while ago to be pretty damn useful, and that is the fact that they buffed it from 171 pen, which is what the A43 Black Prince prototype has. The A43 Black Prince prototype actually has the old gun for this Black Prince, and instead of having the 171 pen, it's got 200 pen, and instead of 239 premium pen, it's got 244 APCR pen, which means that it's enough for every tank you're ever going to face, and that is actually a fantastic penetration for a tier 7 tank. I mean, you look at like the Tiger 1 where it's got 203 AP pen, you know, for when it's getting to that high. Not many other tanks at the tier have as high penetration as these two heavy tanks, and that is absolutely, like I say, absolutely delightful. Now, the Black Prince is something that I use a little bit different on its equipment, and that is I run Rammer, the Advanced Armour, I believe it's called, and Optics. Now, instead of using the vents, because this tank has 380 view range, I know with Optics and the Situational Awareness and Brothers in Arms, or Born Leader as it's now called, I can get the view range up above 450 quite easily, right? And this tank is again one of those tanks where every shot that you take is more damage lost, and it's the same in every tank, right? But the fact is, you've got 3.2 second reload for 150 damage again, which at tier 7 is not that good. And you're facing a fair few tanks with 240, like I say, that have really good rate of fires, and they're probably firing about a second or two quicker than you, or slower than you, sorry. Yeah, they're firing a second or two slower than you, but for 240 alpha. And they're more accurate generally, and they've got better aim times generally. Or they are something like the Russian tanks with 390 alpha, which is just if they manage to play it right, they can pop round the corner, pop one shot into you. You only manage to get one shot into them because you're slow, and they will take all of your health very, very damn quickly. They also have the penetration to mess with your armour. Now, the one thing the Black Prince is decent at is side scraping. You've just got to be careful of the front near the tracks where it can be automatically penned and track you every time. You just got to be aware of that, but it can side scrape pretty decently. It can also do pretty well hull down because the turret has 244 base armour. Right, which means if you're angling or you're hull down or anything, that can go up even higher than that. An effective value, I don't really know the effective value that you could get up to, but it's quite high, and that is really, really useful. And that is actually really damn useful against a lot of tier 9s. But that's the problem, because a lot of the tier, even if you think about the tiering and you get bad tiering, tier 8s, a lot of those have 240 alpha, and a lot of those, quite a few of those have 390 as well, or 320. So they can butter you up as well. So you just got to be aware that when you are bottom tier, they can just wreck your day. Now, we won the fight in the town, and I could maraud towards their base, right? But I'm figuring that they might be going towards our base to cap. So because we're slow, I'm going to try and place myself in a position where I can get as much damage as possible. And that is to try and help defend the base. Now, we do have a TD in the base that is currently spotting it out, and there is a buggy in there, and we've got the perfect shots at him. We're just going to pummel the shots in. We're probably fairly lucky here that there's nothing looking at us because we are in the open, but we're just trying to get the most shots we can into this buggy. Hopefully we'll get to shut him down, but unfortunately just as the shell hits him, the long bomb finishes him off. Now our guys have run towards their artillery, shut down one of them, killed everything else that's in their base, and there's only a TD and an artillery left. Now, I'm thinking there might still be something along the 1-2, so I'm just trying to angle myself that way and make sure that we're wiggling a little bit to try and make it as hard as possible, because if you're wiggling in a tank like this, you may be slow, your armour is okay, but if you're wiggling, you can try and hopefully bait them, and they will end up just hitting your tracks and bouncing. If you're driving in a straight line, you're going to make it incredibly easy for them to kill you, or track you, or pen you, and you don't want that. Now, we end up getting hit by the artillery there. We're probably fairly lucky to be alive. And to be honest, I think that's probably where the advanced armour helped us a little bit, as well as the armour angling perk. That's 10% less damage we're taking in the Black Prince, and that probably saved us in the end from that artillery shell. But unfortunately we didn't get the kill on him, but we do finish with the victory. 5 kills, 3.4k damage, 587 assistance, 1000 blocked, ace tanker, high caliber, 1825 base, like I say, and that is 4k combined for a tier 7 heavy that does 150 alpha, which is really, really nice. But honestly, the tier 5 is pretty decent. You'll probably enjoy the tier 5 decently. The tier 6 is just abysmal. You probably won't enjoy that tank at all. The Black Prince, probably you might enjoy it, you might not. It's one of those tanks where it can be okay, and you don't feel like you're fighting an uphill battle even when you're top tier. When you're top tier, you can actually be pretty decent in the Black Prince. But when you're in the Churchill VII, for example, you just feel like you're fighting an uphill battle, even at your own tier, and that is horrible to be like in a tank. So we're on to, this is where the line starts to shine and come into its own, right? We are now on to the Caernarvon, and the Caernarvon is a beautiful tank, to be honest. It's very good hull down, its mobility is decent, its gun has great DPM and pretty damn decent accuracy. The only downside to it is the shell velocity. You get this 32-pounder gun, which has 280 alpha, and 280 alpha for a 5.5 second reload, which is really damn good. And because it's a 32-pounder, which I believe is actually a 94mm gun, something in that range, that means there's a lot of tanks that you can track and pen first time, which is really nice. Now, we've taken an aggressively spotting position here on Caernarvon. Now, this position is, like I say, pretty damn aggressive. It's a position that actually, to be honest, for me, recently hasn't worked all that much. But if you can get here with a tank that has a good turret armour, you can get hull down and you can spot the whole cross along the north, and you can get quite a bit of assistance. Like, we've got 1,500 assistance at this moment in time, which is really, really good. And since we're hull down, we can bounce a decent amount as well, and we can put this gun to good work. Now, on this tank, I run rammer, optics, and vents. And that's the same as I'll run now on the Conqueror and the Chieftain. Now, back in the day, pre-6.0, it would have been rammer, vert stabs, and optics. But with the advent of 6.0 and the accuracy of pretty much every tank becoming ridiculous, even without vert stabs, you don't really need them. So you boost everything as much as possible with the optics and the vents, because the vert stabs used to help your dispersion while you're on the move. Now it just buffs your accuracy by a base 20%, which is really good. But if a tank's already accurate, are you really going to notice that much of a difference running the vert stabs, as you would be getting a little bit of a boost out the vents, but then getting the vents to also boost everything else about the tank? And probably not. So that's why I run it, because you don't particularly notice that difference in the accuracy between the two. And at that point, once you're getting below 0.24, 0.25 accuracy with all the other boosts, like, you know, with the crew skills and stuff, it's probably just a little bit overkill. So we're pushing forward now to try and attack this Dragon. We've managed to get a good amount of assistance and damage out of pushing this area, and we're just gonna, we're full health. I can be as aggressive as I want with this Dragon. Unfortunately, we mistimed the shot there on him as we came in with the auto aim. He's like, you know what, I'm just not dying to you, and runs away and dies to my team. I hate it when people do that. It's like, I'm not dying to you, I'm just going to die to everyone else instead. Cheers, mate. But now we've got one tank left in the middle that is in front of us that we can get damage on. It's this Object 257. So we've loaded the premium rounds, because we've got 232 standard pen, or 234, one of the two. And we've got like 280 odd, 290 odd with the premium. So we load the premium just so that we can guaranteed go through the front of the 257, because it can be a troll tank to try and pen. And he gets shut down after only getting 2 shots through him. There's only 2 tanks left. It's the Lerva and the M5355. And the likelihood of us ever getting damage on those two is naught, because they're being attacked by our team. And we finished that game with a very nice total for the Caernarvon, and it is a very, very good tank. I prefer it nowadays to what it used to be with the 20-pounder, which is the Paladin. And it's just a great tank. So we finished with the Ace Tanker, the Confederate, the High Caliber, 1981 base XP, 2 kills, 4.9k damage. Just a really great total for the tank. For what is, and honestly, a great tank. You will love this tank playing through it. And if you enjoy the playstyle, you will then absolutely love the next tank in the line. And it's probably still one of the best tier 9 heavies that there is going. This is the Conqueror, and just like the Caernarvon, sorry, you get 10 degrees of gun depression, a fantastic turret, pretty damn decent mobility, decent armour, and a whoppingly fantastic 120mm gun. This gun is just magic. I absolutely love the gun on the Conqueror. It's the same gun that you will get on the FV215B and on the Super Conqueror, but different to the Chieftain. And it's a gun that is just absolutely fabulous. It hits most, even pre-6.0 it was ridiculously accurate. Post 6.0 it's even better. And it's got 259 standard pen, 326 APCR pen, 120 Hesh pen as well. HE has 120 pen on this tank. Don't underestimate those rounds, because they can be damn useful, and you will see that later on in this replay too. In terms of equipment, it's the same as I'll run on the Chieftain as well as the tank before this. Rammer, vents, optics, I've already gone through why I run it like that. And the same crew skills on this tank as run through the whole line, pretty much. Now, we're on highway again, but we're on the opposite spawns to what we were before. And we're taking this position on the hills, because the hills here are a good position to take at the start, especially if you're a tank that's not exactly a brawling heavy tank. Because you can get here, you can spot anything that's trying to use the bushes like that E50 was. You can get assistance on those guys if people try and shoot them, which no one did there. And you can also, if people get spotted in the town crossing where that T10 did, get shots at them as they cross in the town. You got to beware though that obviously those people can also get shots at you as they're crossing over, which can be a bit of a pain. but just be aware of that. Now this tank can do well in in a town situation, but you just got to be wary that its hull armour has its decent upper plate, the lower plate is garbage. It's very easy to pen and track, so you just got to be aware of all these things. When you're side scraping, it can side scrape, but it's not as good as like the Super Conquerors that's side scraping, and it can just get done in quite easily. Now we get fortunate there that the Dragon caught us out, and he only bounced off our side. I have no idea how he did it. He must have seen us turn in and rushed his shot, hit our turret and bounced. Now we're just being aggressive with the Dragon. He manages to find the penners. We get a shot into him, and must be something about Dragons, right? He just decided, you know what, I'm not dying to you. I know there's a T-30 around the corner. I'm just going to drive around into him. T-30 shuts him down. We don't get to shoot him. We know there's an E-50 down here. We know there's a heavy tank. So we're going to try and see if we can get a shot at them. The E-50 is just having his ass hanging around the corner. We tried to track and pen him. Unfortunately, we only penned him, sorry. And now we've got this malware breaker. We get kind of lucky that the malware breaker missed us there. It was kind of one of those things of, oh, I bet he's not looking my way, and then he just was. So we managed to just about avoid his shell. And now we're going to side scrape out against him here on this corner. Now obviously we've got to be a bit careful. He has got a 128mm gun, which is, you know, a high caliber gun. If we over angle even the slightest bit, he is going to pen us. I was aiming for his lower plate as we were going for that on the malware breaker, but I realised, oh, the malware breaker's turret is garbage, as I ricochet off of it, of course I do. It's only got 220 effective armour on the turret front. We've got 259 pen. We're going to butter it up. Now I decide to back away from this corner where, because obviously the E-50 is trying to shoot us inside. We've got lucky that he's ricocheted off our turret. It might not do it again. But the thing is, we actually have artillery trying its best to hit us. And where we were, we had our ass in the breeze to the artillery. The artillery would have quite easily penned us in the butt, because the butt of the tank is like 50mm less, or somewhat less than that even possibly, which means that it's an easy pen for derp guns, it's an easy pen for artillery, and like I say, he did have shots at our back end, so I was like, no, you know, I'm not doing that, and backed away from it. The artillery is now dead, but I didn't even notice that at the situation, or at this point, but it was like, nah, no, we're not doing that. I was on that corner attacking the Malbreaker, but I decided to pull away because the T95 was just trying to drive around. I don't really want to muck about with that T95. He's coming around this side of the building, so I'm deciding, you know what, okay, I'm going to drive around this way. I'm going to try and track and pen the T95 because you can track and pen the thing in the back drive wheel. Unfortunately, I aimed too low. And I didn't track and pen it, I only tracked it. That time, I don't know how I didn't track and pen. The T10's decided to try and get away from my team. He manages to pen us in the side as he runs past, but we finish him off. We're up to 4k damage now, and we're still in a very tense, brawling situation. We've got the T95 on the left, the E50 coming round. He must have given up on trying to get a shot at us. And I'm deciding, you know what, okay, now I'm just going to go after this E50 and shut him down. We know he's fired. I fired literally at the same time. I have a better reload than that guy. Easy penetrations, shut him down. Now there's just this T95 in the town with us. He's attacking our heavy tank friend. So we're going to try and get round him and do exactly what we did before. Try and track and penetrate him. Because the artillery does track him, so that's nice. Unfortunately, we didn't re-track him. But we're going to get round. We're going to try and, like I said, we're failing to do it here. You can do it, I swear. You can track and pen the T95, but we're unfortunately just not doing it. But we do manage to shut him down in the end after the Type 4 gave him a big blap. And now I'm trying to think, what should I do now? There is still a fair amount on their base side, but this light tank is going after our TD. And I'm thinking, looking at the minimap, it looks like he's possibly circling the TD, which means the TD is going to be done for. And I want to get back and defend the base. But there's possible shots at this Malbreaker down this road, so I'm thinking, right, okay, I'm going to see if I can get some shots at this Malbreaker. Because if I can, then that's more damage. But he actually gets shut down by the Scorpion G. So we're going to go back to defend the base, because the light tank did kill the TD. And I am anticipating that the light tank will try and cap, right? And if I get myself into a position where I can defend the cap, that'll be great. I can reset it, and yeah, we'll be all Gucci. Now, the thing with highway, and it's the same for both sides, is that the cap is full of buildings. And it can be a really awkward one to reset from distance. You usually got to close in. Now, we get spotted there as we came around the corner, and really that could only be the light tank over in the distance. So I tried to duck left a little bit to try and avoid him, or the possibility of him shooting us. We're now using this ridgeline on the left because we spot the T-30s on the move up. I'm going to see if I can get shots at him as he's using the base. We managed to catch the UDES there. We've got HE loaded, by the way, 120 Hesh pen. Easy pens on the Falcon. But the back end of a low health UDES, easy pens. Now this Tiger 1 in front of us is actually stock. I'm not worried about the cap at minute. There's 100, there's a minute left to go. So I'm going to try and get some shots into these guys that are coming up. Now Hesh, 120 pen on a Tiger. It's not guaranteed to go through his front, especially if he angles, but the side of his turret and his side as he turns sideways on, easy pens, and we've got 2 big pens through that guy, which is exactly what we needed. Now we've got shots at this T-30, and I want to get another shot at him to try and help our Type 4. But the base is big concern now. I was thinking, right, I'll leave it till it's about 40 seconds, 30 seconds to go before I go and close in on the cap. Because I know once it's hit that 40-second mark or 30-second mark, that's sort of the point I'm thinking that's maybe no return, right? I might not get to the cap in time to reset, or it leaves it down to a last-minute margin, which I don't want, which is why I left at 40 seconds and why we're after this Falcon now. We get spotted by him. He's realised that his doom is approaching. We get the shot into him, and by the way, this is still when that bug was there where everything keeps the icon above it even after it's dead. So there's lots of things that are actually still dead that you're seeing that are possibly alive, but they're not. We do shut down the Falcon with the free aim shot there. He was doomed from the start. I knew because he's got 150 alpha, I was always going to kill him. And now we've got to get back to defend from these guys coming up. I have to get back to this ridgeline as quickly as possible because this ridgeline is my defence. This ridgeline means that I can stay hull down, I can keep my armour as best as it can be, and we can try and help defend against these enemies. We've still got the Type 4 heavy and we've still got the artillery. Now, we managed to get a shot into that SU-101. Luckily, he bounces with his 122mm, and we kill him. Now we've got a shot into the Tom. We get a nice shot into him. I'm just pulling back so that T-30 doesn't have a chance of a shot at me. We're just going to pull up to see if we can see any more shots at this T-30. But he's hiding behind that building over there, which is an indestructible building. So what I want to try and do is close the distance to this T-30 as much as possible, so that I can possibly get a shot at him. Now, I know that the walls here that I'm looking at right now are destructible walls, which means I can shoot through them. So I'm trying to keep myself on this left-hand side in case he tries to poke out to shoot my Type 4. Now, he makes the move, looks like he possibly might do it. So I'm just closing the distance, like I say. He does actually pull out, and we hit the one bit. That metal railing right there that I looked at rather annoyed was the only bit that I couldn't destroy. And we hit it because RNG. Now we're getting shots at us from a tank in the middle. It's the Tiger P. We managed to spot him up. We only had 2 shells left. I was hoping for a possible fade-ins, but the Type 4 Heavy shuts him down. And we finished that game with a fantastic total for the Conqueror. And really, that game showed off exactly what the Conqueror is good at. We finished with 6 kills, 8.7k damage. That's the other thing I was hoping for, is 9k. But we hit 8.7k, which is fantastic. 1,079 assistance, a lot of blocked. Ace Tanker, Sniper, Top Gun, Defender, High Caliber, Steel Wall, 2.3k base XP, 9.7k combined. A great total for the Conqueror. Honestly, this tank is fantastic. It was my second ever tier 9 heavy tank, and it's still one of my most played tanks. It's a fantastic tank. It's well worth grinding for. Even before you get to the great tier 10s, that tank alone is worth grinding the line for. So we're on to the pinnacle of the line. We're on to the tier 10. We're on to the T30. It's not a T30. It's a funny looking T30. And it's also not American. It's the British tier 10 heavy tank, the Chieftain MK6. Now the Chieftain. This was my first British tier 10 heavy, because back in the day when I first unlocked this tank, well, basically when I was grinding through the Conqueror for the first time, it only had the FV215B to unlock. And just as I hit 200k mark XP, they brought the Chieftain out, which was perfect. And I decided, you know what, screw the FV215B. We're going for the Chieftain. It looked incredible. It is incredible. I love it. It's definitely a fantastic tank. It does have things you got to watch out for. When it first came out, everyone thought it was indestructible hull down. It's still pretty damn good hull down, but that cupola is something that a lot of people know about more nowadays and tend to hit and pen. Plus, there's an overmatch spot for heat just above the gun. If people are shooting at you, they sometimes just do pen you if they're firing heat, but just above the gun, and that can be annoying. But it's still really good hull down. It's got absolutely incredible DPM. It's got better DPM than the other two tier 10s, which is great. Only slightly, but still. It's got an absolutely fantastic gun. It's got 2 APCR rounds. It's got 270 on its standard rounds, which is unbelievably good. It's got 310 on its premium APCR, which is, again, more than you'll ever need. It's got 140mm of Hesh pen, but you've got to be aware that the Hesh on this tank is different to the Conqueror, because the Hesh on this tank has incredibly slow shell velocity. It's only got 671 meters a second shell velocity, which is incredibly slow, and you just got to be wary of that when you do switch to it to shoot the targets that are lightly armoured, which, yeah, it means that you do miss shots every now and then just because of how poor the shell velocity is. Now the Chieftain, with its DPM, is fantastic at tracking and penning people in place, and this is what we're doing right now. Now, this game is an epitome of how I 3-marked the tank, right? When I 3-marked the tank, which was quite a while ago, I basically had a Death Star friend, and, well, I say friend, he wasn't in a platoon, he was just a good Death Star player, and he was following me around. And, or should I say, he was following me, I was following him around, it's probably the best way of putting it. And all I was doing was taking a hit, driving around someone, tracking and penning them, taking the distraction, and the Death Star would just drive around, blap them for 1700, I'd get all the assistance. So when I 3-marked it, I only did 3k damage, but I did like 5k assist. You know, 8k combined, and that was enough to 3-mark it. Because the gun was trolling quite a lot back then for me, in the fact that the gun had just derp shells that it should never miss with its really good accuracy. This game has been one of those games where I decided, rather than keep being aggressive and pushing for damage myself, I'd just track people. Because I was hull down there, they were going to struggle to pen me. You saw them ricochet off me 1 or 2 times, and they were all pushing around really aggressively. That situation was about assessing the help that I had. I had a lot of people with me that were sitting behind me, and with those heavy tanks and that pushing aggressively around the corner, I was able to track them, pull back, and let my team blap them. And in doing that, I ended up with 5.2k assistance. And like I say, that is something that the Chieftain is fantastic at. Permanently tracking people, tracking and penning them really reliably, because the pen's really good, the damage 400 alpha is great, the rate of fire, the accuracy, the aim time, it's all fantastic. You can hit anything with pinpoint most of the time. As we go for the shot on the T62A there at decent distance. And it's something that you can do quite reliably. Now, it can be that tracking machine like you've seen here, and that really did help me when I 3-marked it, and that's helped me to have a great game here. So, now we are against only 4 tanks left. There's this E4 in front of us that's pretty full health. There's the heavy tank and the medium tank that are attacking our base, but I'm not really concerned about them. I'm going for this E4 right now. So this E4 drives out sideways on. The incredible accuracy I was on about hits the floor, because of course. I'm just hoping he doesn't ammo rack me, because I've been ammo racked by E4 so many times in the Chieftain. It's something you've got to be aware of, because it is I used to describe it as the walking crit bell, right? Or the driving crit bell. Because the amount of times you drive this tank and your ammo rack could go is incredible. It happens so often that it was just frustrating, because especially when there was no reusable consumables, you'd be driving along, you'd get tracked and penned, and your ammo rack would go, because the ammo rack is behind the drive wheels. Your ammo rack could go, you'd repair it, and then you'd get instantly ammo racked again, and that just screwed you over for the whole game. It's not as bad now in post 6.0 world, because, you know, equipment and consumables, reusable consumables, that's the word I'm looking for, and that really helped. I mean, we finished that game with 4k damage and 5.2k assist. That's 9.2k combined. It's a great game for the Chieftain. And imagine if we'd been ammo racked, we wouldn't have been able to do anything at all in that game. because we just wouldn't be able to get the tracking shots in consistently to get the damage. So, we're on to the second game, and we're on highway again. And I'm just going to use the same position I did in the Conqueror to try and get spots out and get some good shots out. Now, the Chieftain, obviously, I run exactly the same as the previous tanks. Rammer, optics, vents. The one thing that is nice about the Chieftain is the thing that's kind of different compared to the FE215B and the Super Conqueror and the Conqueror and the Caernarvon, is the fact that they all go at 34 kilometers an hour. This tank goes at 42 kilometers an hour. It means that you can play it, or you can get to positions a little bit quicker, and that ability to get to positions quicker is definitely very nice. The one thing about the Chieftain is that it's not got the armour that the others have. Now, the FE215B upper plate is is better than this tank, basically, and its lower plate's garbage and it gets set on fire all the time. Generally, that tank's hull armour does perform better than this tank, though. Although the FE215B is a relic tank, it really needs the love as much as it possibly can. It's just not that good anymore, and it really does struggle, especially when you've got something like the Chieftain and something like the Super Conqueror. Now, the Chieftain was the god of hull down, right? It had great DPM, a great gun, god of hull down, a beast when it was hull down, and, you know, great. Then they brought the Super Conqueror out, and the Super Conqueror does everything that the Chieftain does, but better. Because it can side scrape, it's got better hull armour, it's got better turret armour, it's got the same gun, it's just got slightly worse not the same gun, it's got the same gun as the Conqueror, but it's got, you know, only slightly worse DPM. In terms of the accuracy in that, it's pretty much the same. So the Chieftain then became like, it became Sad Chieftain, right? You know, Super Conqueror is an absolute beast, and it is one of the best heavies at tier 10. It's just stupidly incredible. It's also a little bit boring, which is why I pretty much never play it, because it's got one real strength that you get hull down and you just laugh at everyone and you become OP. It's pretty much where the Super Conqueror is. So the Chieftain, you know, is probably the second tank you'd go for out of the line, out of the three really. But, you know, the 42 kilometers an hour is the difference between this tank and the Super Conqueror, and that mobility does make up for a lot. And it, you know, even if you lose the hull armour, you can get round and aggressively push tanks, which is nice. So, we loaded Hesh there, and we drove up behind the C4 because, well, Hesh to the back of the tank, why not? Get a lot of damage. And we ended up getting slapped by the Chinese tier 10 TD, which, number one, I didn't expect to see, because you never see those things. Number two, I didn't expect him to be there, and he slapped me up, which is not great. He's got 750 alpha, doesn't help. And I decided, right, okay, well, I'm not going to push out that way, because that guy could hurt me. But there's possible shots at this guy beyond this little house. I'm hoping he'll pull forward. Unfortunately, he doesn't. And we're just going to try and poke round this corner and see if we can get shots at this bat chat, which we do. We get a nice shot through him. I was hoping that we'd track and pen him there, but unfortunately not. We're going to see if we can get a shot at him as he's moving away. Oh, unfortunately, he ends up turning at last second, and we don't quite get it. We look for a shot through the destructible cover at the Chinese TD there. Unfortunately, it misses. I'm not quite sure what I hit, but we do get a shot straight through the side of that guy. Now we're getting shot by something from their base. It's clearly an autoloader because it's firing quite quickly. It must be that bat chat. I was anticipating that it was possibly next to that building, so we popped a blind shot. Unfortunately, it didn't go in. And we're just going to move back to try and get some cross shots at our base. Because look where, I mean, our heavies are pushing forward down the K-line, right? But it felt like there might be something more than that bat chat in their base. I didn't want to push down the K-line because that's probably going to be death. And I don't want to do that. Now, there is something pushing our base. Now, obviously, there is no base. It's team destruction. But this is the safer option, to be honest, because you're probably going to get pummeled going down there and just die. Our guys are trying to defend the people crossing the valley, and for the most part they're all sitting in front of it, so I want to get back to this little ridgeline here to try and create a crossfire. So if anything does pull up, I will be able to get shots into it. Now, to be honest, we're on the wrong side of the ridgeline here. This is a risky move that we're on at the minute, trying to get some shots at possibly this bat chat, but he might be out of range. I'm not quite sure. We're just going to see if we can get a shot, see if is there. We're trying to line it up on the map. But like I say, I'm in a risky place now because I'm actually on the wrong side of this ridge. really, I need to be on the other side. I am using this bush in front of me because, I mean, as much as I'm a heavy tank, more coverage means less chance of getting spotted. But then I realise, yeah, I'm probably in the worst spot going, especially if this light tank decides to come up over this way. He'll light me up, and if there's anything else sitting in the field, like where that Tiger P was, for example, earlier on in the game, in the not the Black Prince, the Conqueror, sorry, then I'll get shot up and I'll die pretty quickly. So we're just going to stick with this ridgeline at the minute. We're going to see if we can get some shots at this T100, but he's just sort of manoeuvring up and down on the ridgeline currently. And we're just staying hull down because that is the strength of the Chieftain. We managed to bounce something for quite a lot there, and I'm thinking, what was that? And it's possibly the Gorilla. We managed to get a nice shot into this Jagdpanzer. I'm trying to help my heavy tank buddy over here because he is all alone now, because they did try to push down that K line, and like I say, it was death. There was no hope of doing it. There is a Jagdpanzer that was down there that we didn't know about, but it was a possible play, who helped to shut everyone down, as well as the people camping in the base. We managed to help our heavy tank friend by getting rid of the bat chat that was circling him. That could have been bad for him. We're seeing if we can get a shot at this guy over here, but he gets shut down. And now I'm thinking, right, I want to get over to try and help my 277 friend against this Jagdpanzer, because, yeah. But I'm hoping the Jagdpanzer will get spotted up while I'm hull down on this ridgeline. He does, which means he's not actually above the ridge, so I can't get any shots into his side. He ends up blapping our 277, which is not good. And then this Gorilla gets spotted in the open. It's like, well, why not? We get a nice shot into him to track and pen him. He's burnt his repair kit. He's now tracked and penned. We end up moving forward a little bit, so our angle is a little bit better to try and perma-track this Gorilla. So we've tracked and penned him, I believe, and I think we've actually got him fully pinned. And this DPM on the Chieftain is enough to be able to do that to people. So we're just going to keep pummeling the shots in. Now, I move a little bit here because I'm anticipating him possibly popping a blind shot, which he did. I'm trying to follow our shell tracers because he was facing our way. Fortunately enough, he missed, and we did manage to get the whole health of that Gorilla blind and shut him down. Now there's just a medium tank, a light tank, the TD, and the artillery. We know where the Jagdpanzer is. He's there, and I'm just being a little bit wary of him because obviously there is artillery. If I get lit here, the artillery might try and pop a blind shot. We don't know where the medium tank or the light tank is. So they could be somewhere where, they could be somewhere which could hurt us. Now, I was this is actually a game I had on stream, and at that point there where you saw me moving up and down, that I was telling the stream at that point, these guys over there at C23, I want them to get to D23 before I push the Jagdpanzer. Now, why do I want to get there before? Why do I want them to get there before pushing the Jagdpanzer? Well, because for the reason that you're seeing now. The medium tank and the light tank got spotted up over there, so we know it's safe to push this Jagdpanzer. So now I've got that information, I'm happy to pull up and shoot this Jagdpanzer. Now, we get lucky there. Oh, unlucky and lucky. Unlucky because we ricochet off the lower plate of the Jagdpanzer. APCR, that's the thing that this tank suffers from the most. The 2 degrees of normalisation on the APCR, meaning that you tend to bounce on angled surfaces where if you were shooting AP or heat you probably wouldn't. And we actually got fairly lucky that he just didn't snapshot us. That could have been the end. We pulled far too much. We pulled over that ridgeline far too much, but we managed to get a shot into him. We loaded the premium, we went for the cupola on top, we got the shot in, and then artillery ended up finishing him off. So now there's just the medium tank and their artillery. The medium tank gets shut down, and it's just the artillery left. So I'm thinking, right, what? It's an M355, I think. I could kill it with the AP, but at the same time, I think I might need the Hesh, and I'm toying with the idea of loading the Hesh right now. If I'm going to load it with the chance of killing him and getting there to spot him and kill him with the Hesh, I need to think about loading it right this second. But we're pushing over to try and see if we can spot him, and I think, yeah, okay. And now we see the tree fall over on the left. Did you see that? And it is the M355. I actually didn't need the Hesh, he'd already taken a hit, but it helped to finish him off anyway because we did load it up in time. Then we finished that game with a nice total for the thing. We got 4k that we saw, but we ended up getting 7 kills, 6.1k damage because we got the whole health of that Gorilla blind, 935 assist, 1140 block from being hull down, which is the way that the Chieftain works really well. Ace Tanker, Devastator, High Caliber, Top Gun, 1653 base XP. The Chieftain is a fantastic tier 10. The whole line is decent. All 3 tier 10s that you can unlock on this British heavy tank line are well worth the grind. The Conqueror at tier 9 is fantastic. You want to play that tank. Chieftain, great. So as always, everybody, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.
A great success!